What's going on everyone, Mike here, and this is my full review of the Sony Xperia Z2, Sony's latest flagship and successor to the Xperia Z1. The first Z was launched about a year ago and set out a solid foundation. Premium feel and looks, weatherproof case, powerful hardware, leading-edge camera. On paper it was astonishing, in real life, not so much. The Z1 followed a few months after and fixed some of the Z's issues. And now Sony have released the Z2, a more refined version of the same recipe. On a first look, it's almost impossible to actually set them apart, as the Z2 inherits the same design lines of its predecessor, with the glass-covered front and rear faces, the subtly curved metallic sides, and the lean monolithic shape. There is a price for all this though. The Z2 is not a compact or a light device, although it has lost some weight over the Z1, tipping the scales at just over 160 grams. It's also millimetrically longer than the Z1, and that's because it houses a larger screen, but it's not wider or thicker. In fact, Sony worked on reducing the bezels in order to keep this device as compact as possible. Even so, the Z2 is large when compared to other premium Android handsets, and that alone might steer some of you away from it. In Sony's tradition, the Z2 is still IP certified, dust and waterproof. That's why the glass surfaces are still covered by a thin plastic film out of the box, but one that's hardly intrusive. And that's why the main ports are still protected by plastic caps, which do feel somewhat better made than on the Z1 though. The element proofness has been a differentiator for the Zs from the beginning, although I for one was never a big fan of it. It has a negative effect on the speakers, call quality, and even on the everyday use experience, without any real benefit. I mean, why would I really want a waterproof phone? It's not like I'm taking showers with my phone or spend all my time at the pool or something. A more practical approach or perhaps a more ruggedized body would have certainly made the Z2 more appealing for me. All covered in glass as it is today, I found myself continuously worried I might drop and shatter it, not to mention about always having to wipe it clean, as smudges and fingerprints are a complete pain with this one. But enough ranting. Sony stick with these design lines and I'm sure plenty of you like it. So let's move on what's actually changed on the Z2. On the front face you'll notice two very narrow cuts towards the top and bottom edges of the glass. They're not only hiding the earpiece, main microphone and the redesigned notification LED, now longer and brighter than before, but there's also a set of stereo front-facing speakers behind them. As a result, the sound coming out of the Z2 is not bad at all, although still not very punchy. Hear for yourselves. On the back, the main shooter and the flash are the only elements piercing the glass. Even the secondary microphone cut, that was found here on the Z1, has been now moved on the phone's upper lip. Having a quick look around the Z2's sides, you'll find the same buttons as on the previous Z and the same ports. However, they have been slightly switched around, and on the right edge, instead of having two separate plastic caps covering these connectors, there's a single one now. All these subtle tweaks are meant to improve your everyday experience with the Z2, but there are other things that have a much greater impact. One of those is the new screen. As I mentioned before, Sony squeezed the larger 5.2-inch screen on the Z2 as opposed to the 5-incher on the Z1. Aside from that, the Japanese still went with their triluminous TFT panel and did not up the resolution, but stick with 1920 by 1080 pixels instead, which is just fine with me. Now, actually using the screen is a sheer pleasure. It's bright, sharp and vibrant, and more importantly, it doesn't suffer from the same poor viewing angles that crippled the Z1. But there's still room for improvement here. All in all though, Sony listened and addressed another one of the Z1's main issues, although they can do better as proven by the Xperia Z Ultra's astonishing display. Moving on, you probably noticed by now that there's a slightly changed Android version on the Xperia Z2, and that's because it comes with Android 4.4 KitKat and all its graphics and functional tweaks. Aesthetically, most UI elements are simpler and cleaner, and of course the wallpapers do stretch under the main navigation buttons and system tray on the home screens. Looks aside, KitKat also runs smoother than Jelly Bean, and as a result the Xperia Z2 is blazingly fast, even when compared to the Z1, with whom it shares nearly the same hardware. In fact, both devices run on Snapdragon 800 platforms, with a slight frequency bump for the Z2 and an extra 1GB of RAM for a total of 3. And since we are talking about hardware, I should mention that there are still only 16GB of storage space on the Z2, and just under 12GB of those are usable for your own apps and content. Of course, that can be expanded with microSD cards if needed. But let's get back to the software for a little bit. The Xperia Z2 runs a slightly skinned Android version and bundles a few proprietary apps and services. Looking back at Sony's Jelly Bean implementation, the themes have been slightly changed. The multitasking panel has received the option to close all apps at once, while the notification panel has been split in two tabs, one for actual updates and one with a set of quick toggles. You can tweak the toggles displayed in here from the settings. In fact, if you'll dig through the settings, you'll find some of the Z2's new extra features. For instance, the screen now offers a gloves on mode and can be tapped twice if you want to wake up the device without having to press the power button. Then, the Z2 supports motion gestures for answering, rejecting or muting calls, which if I'm not mistaken were not available on the Z1. Last but not least, the audiophiles among you will be happy to know that the Z2 can push high-quality audio towards an external sound system via USB-compatible DAC amplifiers. Aside from these things mentioned above and those extra brought by KitKat, like the smarter dialer, Google Now integration and so on, all the other classic Sony tweaks and services are still available on the Z2. Apps like Walkman, PlayStation or Album, and features like the small apps or the easily customizable app drawer are present on this new Xperia. Since I mentioned the dialer, I do have to tell you that Sony slightly addressed the muffled earpiece issue as well, which is now somewhat louder and clearer. Even so, the Z2 is not the ideal smartphone for taking or receiving calls, so if you plan on using it for that, I suggest looking at a Bluetooth headset as well. Anyway, let's move on and turn our attention onto the cameras. On a first look, not much has changed here either. There's the same 2-megapixel front shooter and the same 20.7-megapixel main camera on the back. The camera interface was inherited from the Z1 as well, with all its modes and tweaks. Unfortunately though, something else was inherited from the Z1, the buggy superior auto mode, which mushes out plenty of details from pictures. On top of that, the camera really struggles to focus in dim light, both with flash on or off. Switching to the manual mode solves some of the problems, but requires tweaking each time you want to take a pic. And that's not good enough for me. I want a fast and reliable all-round camera on my phone, and unfortunately for Sony, the Z2 does not entirely deliver here. You should head to the written review on my site for more details. I'll add some pictures in there for you to analyze and I'll link it from the description. Now, when it comes to taking videos though, the Z2 is a lot better. It can take regular 1080p clips, 4K recordings and even slow motions, with the easy-to-use time-shift video mode, so nothing to complain about in here. Before we wrap this up, I should also mention a few things about the battery. On paper, the Z2's battery is only slightly larger than the one on the previous Z. In practice, the Z2 lasts longer on a charge. I haven't conducted thorough battery tests, but the Z2 was able to go through the day with some serious use and over 4 hours of active screen time, with cellular data on all of the time and a few email and social media accounts constantly updating in the back. And that's not bad at all. So at the end of the day, the Xperia Z2 is no doubt the best smartphone Sony has delivered to date. And it proves one thing: Sony listens and acts. Many complain about the speakers, the screen and the battery life on the Z1, and here they are addressing those. They also bumped up the specs, brought the OS to date, squeezed a larger screen inside pretty much the same body, and even worked on camera performance, although that still requires further tweaking. I truly respect them for this, and I wish more companies would do it. But is the Xperia Z2 worth buying? Well, if you like Sony's design elements and particularities, then yes, for sure. However, keep one thing in mind. The Z2 is only the first flagship to be released this year. The Samsung Galaxy S5, the new HTC One or the LG G3 are around the corner, and I for one would like to know how all these fare against each other before putting my money on any of them. Of course, I will cover all these devices here on the channel, so if you enjoyed this video and want to see more videos like it, make sure to subscribe if you're not subscribed already. Anyway, that's about it for now. Thanks for watching and I'll catch you in the next clip. But in the meantime, the comment section is open, so let me know what do you think about this Xperia Z2 down below.